We are officially back from a little bit of a hiatus. We have a rebrand / name change. We've taken some trips, not just RV trips, but cruises and some other things. All that coming up next on the podcast. Welcome back. I'm Ryan.
I'm Lauren, and together we are Millers in Motion. Welcome back to the first episode, I guess you could say, of the Millers in Motion podcast, which was formerly the RV Shenanigans podcast.
Craziness. We rebranded, but in the ever so slight way.
Very tricky like that.
We are. So ultimately, let's talk a little bit about why we did that.
Yes, let's kind of come clean a little bit.
So essentially what happened was...
What happened?
People were asking us where to find the podcast, and we would tell them, like, well, you can search for Millers in Motion podcast, and we would always tag our name. But at the end of the day, it was called the RV Shenanigans podcast. And believe it or not everybody that watches the full-length videos on Millers in Motion cared about the podcast. Shocking. I don't know why they didn't. But it is. I understand if you're not a podcast person, how that might get annoying.
So while we were having a blast and the best of intentions, we inadvertently confused a whole lot of people.
We pissed off the analytics.
We kind of did.
So the other side of this too is that YouTube is learning podcast stuff. And so if you are watching, I guess listening to this on YouTube, if you notice, we have the new channel. So technically we have 2 YouTube channels, but we have converted this to an audio-only podcast, and that is for our convenience, nothing more. To be completely honest with you, it took a lot of time to sync the footage, and every time I'd cut, it took quite a bit of time to do that. And when we do the full-length videos, plus this, plus travel plan, plus work regular jobs, it became a little bit much, and we realized I wasn't going to be able to get out podcasts as frequently, so we get to do less podcasts, or we can move to this.
And if you want to see our pretty faces, you can go see us on YouTube.
You can. Oh, right over there at Millers in Motion. So that's why, and the other side of the whole Millers in Motion podcast versus RV Shenanigan podcast thing is, quite frankly, people were searching for our name, and it was just easier to name it after us.
And, that probably made more sense.
Yeah. I have a bad habit of diving too deep into things sometimes. Like, this is great. Let's do this. This is awesome. Hey, simple is better sometimes.
Yeah, we're learning as we go.
We are. But with that being said, it's not necessarily going to be a new format. Like we talked about just briefly, there is not going to be a video proportion of this. Why, you may ask? If you're used to watching the old podcast on the YouTube channel, you may go, but. So the kicker, too, is that, honestly, of all of the people that listen to the podcast, only about 5 to 8%, depending on the show, were on YouTube. Everything else was some sort of a podcast platform, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcast or one of the other gazillion that are out there, because we're on all of them. And so it really didn't matter as much, what I came to realize. And so I want to spend more time focusing on the show structure, on the audio side of that, and make it a better show to listen to as you're driving down the road, getting on an airplane, whatever you happen to do, or researching a trip. So that was the other side of that whole thing. So welcome officially to the Millers in Motion podcast, where we're going to talk about a lot of stuff.
And we can talk about even more stuff now that we don't have to video it, because we can do like in the truck, road trip days. We can do all kinds of fun things. Yep,
we absolutely can. So let's talk a little bit about why we're kind of going with this new structure, a little bit beyond the RV. If just as a quick backstory, if you found us previously, you know that we are living full-time in our RV, or Lauren normally says the intro, so you want to just tell them that real quick? Not so much?
Well, I think you kind of, spoiler alert, you kind of did that already. No, we had a house, we sold the ranch, we were living full-time in the RV for kind of that experience and several things, and we absolutely loved it. We really did. But I have to say, we enjoy it, but we also enjoy other things, which, again, more learning curve, we came to find out.
Yeah, I love tacos. Oh, we're talking about travel?
Let's stick to the topic at hand, sir.
So, yeah, we found ourselves wanting to do more things. And while we love the RV life, I'm that idiot that gets up at the crack of dawn for an early flight because he wants to go sit in a lounge and be at the airport and watch planes take off for an hour before his flight. Lauren's not.
No, Lauren is not. Lauren gives Ryan anxieties.
And so we're not going to talk about that. But we enjoy all forms of travel. Whilst we love RV life, we also love getting on airplanes and going to destinations that maybe our RV can't take us to. We love getting on cruises, which to me is like RVing, except someone else is cleaning, cooking, and driving you somewhere.
I like that.
Unpack once and see like 2 to 5 things. So we wanted to be able to expand this podcast and not only just include RV life, but to also include other adventures, other forms of travel. And we've learned a lot of tricks along the way, traveling as much as we have. We want to be able to share those with you so that you can either travel cheaper, travel smart, travel however you want to travel. But, we have some tricks that we can let you in on.
I think we also learned, we've been doing this for 2.5 years now,
Has it really been 2.5
full-time
years?
RV life.
Wow.
And we learned that other RVers also like to travel differently, right?
Time flies when you're fixing your RV.
But no, they do. And so I think we kind of found some common ground. People were like,
Right.
oh, yeah, we live full time in the RV, but we still like to do X, Y, and Z. And so they still wanted to have those conversations, and which I think was kind of underappreciated. So I'm glad we're here.
Well, and by no means take this as we're bailing on the RV stuff. There's always going to be RV topics. There's always going to be those things. We have a tendency to focus on the travel side of RVing anyway. So kind of take everything we've done with the travel side of RVing and just know that there's going to be occasionally muted sneezes in the background. That was actually really quiet. I'm impressed by that.
I tried really hard.
But, we're going to take that same idea and then apply it to cruises and other things. We do have a couple of cruise podcasts we did previously to taking our little hiatus. And the hiatus was there simply for us to have a little bit of a natural reset. We needed a moment to figure out what we wanted to do. We wanted to give the podcast a moment to let it come back a little more naturally. Sometimes if you make a change and don't skip a beat, it's kind of a shocking, wait, what just happened moment, where now we've had a little bit of a break. So if you're a current listener and have listened to the podcast since the beginning, for starters, thank you. But second of all, now it has a more natural progression and it's less shocking because you've seen these things on our social media kind of coming out a little bit more. This is just our first official version of the podcast that way.
And the timing was actually really good for us to do that because Ryan and I were actually apart for almost a month.
Yes,
There
yeah,
were
it was.
several trips that were just back to back that unfortunately he was going on by himself for various reasons. And so
Let's go for Lauren had to work.
it is. But like you went to see your parents, you went up to Indiana, you went to see your friend Todd with Big Beard and all kinds of things. So
It feels like that was 7 months ago. I forgot about Todd. Sorry, I didn't forget about Todd. I forgot about going to your house, Todd, if you're listening to this. Sorry.
So I stayed back with the dogs and the job and all the things, and he went to do that. So it was about a month, and that was just a really good time for us to kind of take this and digest the information.
It was, and it's been about a week or so since I've been back, and Lauren moved back onto the RV, and a big thanks to our friends up at Alliance RV for taking such good care of us because when I knew I was going to be up there, that we went up for our More Ride 12-month independent suspend. Oh, good night! I haven't podcasted in a while. Words are hard.
Words are hard.
So we went initially to Elkhart for our More Ride independent suspension 12-month maintenance
Good job.
appointment. And so while they were there, I figured, well, I'll just go visit the people over at Alliance. So I reached out to them, happened to be able to get a service appointment. Now, granted, keep in mind, I scheduled all this months and months and months ago. But I figured let's knock a few little things out that maybe I could have fixed, but a little bit more complicated. So let's take it to the guys that really know what they're doing. Took it up there, hadn't seen my parents in a while, so went up to Wisconsin. You're seeing all of that over on the main YouTube channel right now, so we're not going to bore you with a lot of that. But that's kind of what happened, and in fact, I think that's today's video was, well, they were recording this. The video that came out, which I now has realized is yesterday, was traveling up to Madison, so go check that video out. But before we dive into kind of the future of this in a little bit more detail, knowing that we're going to do some non-RV content soon, I figured it'd be fun to tease, like, what's some of our most memorable non-RV trips. And I'm going to say from, like, not necessarily, well, whenever, but, like, back to prior to recording it on the channel. So something the channel's never seen.
So some of you may know, but most of you probably don't. My family did not travel a lot whenever I was little. And so we did like tent camping trips,
Yeah.
but we didn't travel a whole lot otherwise. And so most of my memories are either tent camping with the scouts because my dad was a leader there.
Yep.
And then I would say our first big trip, my first big trip, honestly, was probably our honeymoon, Disney World.
Oh, okay. So what was so memorable about that besides the fact? So
What?
I was about to say besides. So this is the hard part where it's like so many of our personal experiences affected our travel, and so obviously like that we were on cloud nine still. Well, when we woke up, can I tell that story real quick? So this is the whole point, is to like let people get to know us a little bit better.
Go for it.
So we planned our whole wedding, and by we I mean Lauren. And then when she couldn't decide, she put two things in front of me, and I said, "Well, which one do you like better?" And then I just picked that one.
P.S. A wedding for 300 guests
Oh yeah, it was
in
a
a
big
city
wedding.
we didn't live in
Oh yeah, we were living in Austin. Yeah.
as I was graduating.
So I had one job, and that was to plan the honeymoon. Now we picked the destination together, and yes, if you know us in real life or from the videos, it's not all that shocking that we picked Disney World.
No.
Well, I think your exact words were, "I'm not sure I can lay on a beach for a week with you and your ADHD."
Facts.
And so we went somewhere where my ADHD can ping off of other things instead of just you.
And I say that as I'm sitting here playing with the microphone cord.
Stop that. This is cheap equipment. I'm just kidding. No, so we went to Disney World for, I think, 5 or 6 days. And yes, you can honeymoon Disney. Yes, there's a way to do it as an adult. Yes, you have to be okay with theme parks and the mouse and all that stuff. But had an absolute blast doing it. And so, yeah, that's... Now, I will say this, but why was that your most memorable trip prior to the channel? Not because of our wedding and just getting married and all that stuff. The actual destination travel, that portion of it.
You know, it was new experiences for me. And so I'd never been to Florida. You know, I'd never been to Disney World. There are some people that live a lifetime and don't get to go to Disney World.
That's true.
You know, the food was good. There was entertainment there. You know, we got to do
It was entertainment.
that, to stay in a fancy hotel. And just to be frank, if you grow up with not a lot of money, staying in a fancy hotel is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And so staying in a really nice hotel with a really fun pool, like I didn't even have to go to the parks.
So what travel experience did you have prior to Moa?
Camping trips and at least one road trip to Corpus Christi.
Yeah. Well, and you'd only been, I think I remember you said you'd only been on one flight, and that was to Houston.
It was to Houston
And
to
then
see
you-
family.
Yeah, to see family. And then you had a church trip you did to Colorado, too.
Oh, yeah. Again, another road trip to
Yeah.
skiing in Colorado.
But Colorado was really the only time you had left the state of Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And then we met, good night, how old were we? We met a while ago.
20 years to be specific.
Yeah.
Coming up on 21.
And I think somewhere around 6 to 8 months or so, we took our first trip, which was a family trip. But some of your aunt and uncle were getting remarried in Vegas, I think is what it was. Was that the first time we traveled together? Mm-hmm. So we went to Vegas. Granted, we went with your whole family except your dad because he said not a chance.
Sure did.
He was the camping guy. He was not.
He was a smart one.
Yeah, he did not want to go to Vegas. No, that was fun. No, we got to do a lot of alone stuff too, which was fun. So like we went and ate at nice restaurants, and we had gone back to Vegas since then, but we're not big gamblers, so Vegas isn't a high list.
Well,
thing
and when
for
we
us.
went, I wasn't 21 yet.
Right.
And so some of our activities were still restricted.
Yeah, that just gives you a clue of, well, now you can do math.
Anyways.
So for me, I'm trying to think of what's a memorable trip. So our honeymoon is, but again, because of the honeymoon thing. So my family, we grew up going to Disney World every couple of years or so. And I don't know that, I mean, those are memorable, but I'm going to try not to pick one of those because of yours. And it's hard because like now when you go back, and I think this happened on our trip there too, is there's a nostalgia version for me, whereas you don't have that. You have that now from our honeymoon. And have you been back since our honeymoon?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did. We went with my family, and then we took your little sister and your mom and dad
and my
went.
parents.
Yeah.
They
well,
were
I'm
there
just saying
too.
our parents all went,
Yeah.
and then your little sister went. But that's the last time we were back, and that was like 2010. Text message. Excuse me. So for me, I'm going to say Colorado. So we used to go up to Keystone in the summer. And so I remember going up there when I was kind of that 8 to 10 range. and we were walking around, and I don't know why my mom or dad. So if you know me, you know if I can pull one over on you, and for the fun of it, it's rather entertaining for me sometimes. And we were walking along the woods, and one of them yelled, "Look, a bear." I couldn't hear a word they were saying because I was far enough away. And, well, yeah, let's just say I turned around, and there was a tree that looked a lot like a bear. So then I started sprinting down this hill. It wasn't a mountain, and they thought that was hilarious. There's an old VHS of this somewhere. Thank God it's on VHS, and it's hidden somewhere. But for me, it's really Colorado. So is there a form of travel that you really want to explore more?
I don't think necessarily explore more. I am not keen on flying, and so I am much more road trip, whether that's like, we've driven to Santa Fe, we've driven to Colorado, we've driven several places without the RV.
Right.
And so I still enjoy those, but I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy the RV so much is because I enjoy being on the road instead of in a plane.
Okay. What don't you like about flying? I know, but they don't.
I don't like being told what to do.
Wow.
To an extent. I'm not a good flyer. I don't like having to be somewhere at a certain time, and I forget things that are in my purse, and I get in trouble with TSA. And, if the plane is delayed, it's completely out of my control, which happens a lot. They lose stuff. I feel like it's hurting cattle, and I have no control. And I feel like there's a lot of stress involved, whereas if I'm driving on the road, like the responsibility is all on me, but, so I get to make the decisions too. And I don't mind that at all.
Well, but cruising has a lot of those same restrictions. I don't know how to call them restrictions, time constraints.
It's true. I like cruising, but I have to leave my puppies home, and I really don't like that.
So at the end of the day, is it really about all that, or is it about not being able to take the pups?
Oh, no, it's both.
Okay. So is there a trip that what's your biggest bucket list trip, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
I'm going to say this and negate everything I just said.
That's why I asked it.
You know it. Mm-hmm. He does this to me on purpose, y'all. Hawaii. I am itching to go to Hawaii so very badly. And we had planned it, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And ruined our game plans for that. And we just haven't gotten...
It didn't ruin. It ruined that version of it.
It did. And so we haven't gotten another game plan ready to go back.
Oh, but have we? Coming from the planner, I can tell you there's a couple iterations of it. It still exists. It's just we haven't talked about it much.
No, we haven't. It's not in the very, very near future, like the 6 to 12 month plans.
Unfortunately for us, the amount of time we want to spend in the island or islands, depending on how we decide to do it, is a very large time constraint for you to be away from work that long. Whether you're in person or remote, it's irrelevant. You don't want to work while you're there. So we're working it out, and that's something that will definitely be documented on the channel and how we do it too. And I think that's the thing I'm most excited for. In fact, just leading into what to expect from the podcast and the channel, the thing that I'm most excited for is that so I'm not supposed to use this term anymore. I've been asked not to, but I'm going to use it. But we've really kind of travel hacked a little bit more lately. And I say that in terms of...
You can be in trouble.
Well, but I'm not necessarily... So you can earn miles and points. I don't consider that travel hacking. I consider that earning miles and points and then utilizing them. Now, flying to different cities, using different modes of transportation to get somewhere less expensive or earlier or later or make it work for you a little more, to me, that's more travel hacking. And so, that's the stuff I'm excited to kind of talk about, whether it's an RV trip, a road trip, a flight, a train trip, which I know you're super excited about train trips too.
Oh, my ADD. We have discussed this. I cannot handle a train. I can handle like a 2-hour flight, not well, but I do. But the train, no.
I was about to say, I think you tolerate the planes because you can cover a very large distance in half a day. Mm-hmm. That's the payoff is at least worth some of the hassle as long as you do it too much, kind of a thing.
And the airport is somewhat entertaining. I get my steps in and I get to people watch, and there's usually some yummy food somehow, some way before you get on the plane.
Is that code for Chick-fil-A?
No, usually there's froyo somewhere.
Oh, that's right. I forget every time you fly without me, I get a picture of like Pinkberry or something else. But I am excited about what's kind of coming up because we have been working for a while now on earning points and miles and being super what's the best way to say this?
Intentional in how we spend it.
Well, intentional
Smart.
and signing up for the right cards at the right times, and then, learning how to redeem them in a way that maximizes our point value and all that stuff. And I will tell you that if you know what I'm talking about, like most people understand that you're talking about using credit cards to earn points and miles. Not a lot of people understand the lengths that you can go to maximize.
That I agree with.
And you can go so far down this rabbit hole, it can become a full-time job. Insert shameless plug here, Ryan. So when I say that, the people we learned it from originally were Karen and Nate on YouTube. That's where we first picked it up. I remember Nate's video with the little napkin, kind of explaining it all and how to redeem and that kind of stuff. And for most people, I'm sure it was a very boring video because he literally just filmed a napkin and talked about it. For us, I looked at it as like, ooh, free stuff.
It was an important kind of turn in how we looked at things.
And so we started to redeem points and miles, sign up for credit cards at the right times to get bonus points, all of those things. And from there, they created something called the Daily Drop, which is essentially all of these things that he's done, but in a company form. And so the articles, the things they do over there are super impressive. They cut a lot of work out of you if you're trying to figure out how to redeem points. So they let you know when there's big redemptions, big things happening, that kind of stuff. And so we've used them for a while now, so much so that we've actually partnered with them. So if you're considering getting into that, do me a favor. There's a link down below or in the show notes for the Daily Drop and us. And if you happen to sign up for a credit card, full disclosure, we will get a little bit of a commission. So if you're thinking about doing it, please use our link. You will be helping us out and help us pay for all of these. I'm going to still say shenanigans.
You had to throw that in there, didn't you?
I did. So, what are you hoping from the new version of the podcast, or what are you excited most about? Maybe branching out from just the RV stuff.
I was going to say, I like the flexibility that we can talk about all of our travels, not just the RV travels.
Right.
And so I do look forward to that. I think that since we are not videoing, we can be a little bit more on the fly. So I think you may get some more random topics, some drive day topics, some interesting things that aren't quite as scripted and well thought out. So you may get some bloopers too.
Audio bloopers, which we have a tendency to leave in there anyway, just because it's kind of fun to leave them in.
Right. And so I like those.
Yeah, I think the big thing too is like, listen, the structure is not going to change all that much. If you like how we're structured, or if you don't like how we're structured, I don't have intentions on doing anything on that front. But at the same time too, if you like a certain thing or way, then let us know. I think the big important part, a lot of this too, is there's a little lab doggy out there. ADHD for the win. This is why you shouldn't open your window behind you. We're sitting in our slide out in our RV, and I can see out of her window.
I appreciate that this is my fault for opening the window.
It is right now because there's puppies out there and they're like dogs. Anyway, back to the topic. So if we are always looking for feedback, and so one way or another, and there's a couple different ways you can get. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can obviously go down to the comments. Because it's an audio-only podcast, all your podcast platforms, if you go down to the show notes, there's actually a link at the top that talks about how you can text message us. Now, we can't reply to that, but by all means, send us those notes. I may even read some of them if you just want to make a comment. Or you want something read online. I'm going to try and set a voicemail up soon so we can actually play some of them and answer questions. But we want to be a resource, I think, on this as well to answer some of those questions. So don't hesitate away from that. If you don't have to work any of that stuff, if you just go to the website, millersinmotion.com, there's a contact us form at the bottom as well. Now, with that being said, yes, there is the format's not necessarily changed, but the topics will, and they may bounce around a little bit. Am I losing you over there? Why?
Because you're long-winded and my ADD wins.
It's a podcast. We're meant to talk.
I was given false information. I was told this would be short.
This is short. This is very short still because we're almost done and we barely hit the 20-minute mark. You just haven't podcasted in a while.
Anyways.
So that's, we've got some exciting travel coming up that we are going to talk a little bit about in next week's podcast. We also sat down for our RV people out there, we also sat down recently with Jack Enfield up at Moride, talked a little bit about what to expect from them in 2025 and a few things. So don't worry, there will definitely be RV topics, but there's going to be a bunch of other topics too. So anything else that you would like the people to know on the rebrand and the relaunch?
No, we're still us. We're still here. We're just made a few changes. It's kind of like when you make pancakes. The first one doesn't quite turn out, but then you
I
get
like
better
pancakes.
Afterwards. Like we made our first pancake 2.5 years ago when we jumped into RV life, and so we're tweaking things as they work for us.
So you're saying we moved on to crepes?
No, we are
Advanced
not to crepes
pancakes?
yet. We are not there yet, but we're kind of tweaking as we go, figuring out what works for everybody.
Well, do us a favor. We want to hear from you and know that if you have something you want us to talk about in travel, RVs, whatever. I mean, as long as it's in that box somewhere, I'm fine with it. But reach out to us. Let us know. I do need to let you know, if you've made it to this point, first of all, thank you, because we're nearing the end of the episode. But if you'd like to join us, we are going to be at the United Rally, which is hosted by Switch It Up. They kind of put the whole thing together, even though they said it's not a, what do they call them, huddles?
Right.
But we have a bunch of our friends that are going to be there. There's a lot of channels that are going to be there, but Dave and Tanya from Let's Turn It Up World, Chris and Katrina from Our Everyday Getaway, Mike and Susan from RV Blogger. You're starting to smile. By all means, come check us out over there. You can find the link to that. You can find the link to that rally in the show notes as well. Thank you guys so much for listening. We look forward to hearing from you, and stay tuned till next week, and we'll get back into some travel topics.
Bye.